This is The Roadmap with Ted Jenkins.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Roadmap, exclusively here on ASBN.com. I'm Ted Jenkins, your host, and every week we bring you some of the brightest and best CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs all around the country. And some of them are climbing the ladder, they're scaling their business, and hopefully one day they exit stage left. We love to talk to you about all this stuff. I'm excited this week to have on Dr. Donte Vaughn. He's the CEO of CultureWorx, and we're going to talk all about culture today, but about exiting businesses and much more. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on the program today.
Thank you.
Excited to see you. Now, before you launched CultureWorx, you were in a boutique operational management consulting firm.
Yes.
And why did you want to, like a lot of people, why did you want to leave that? A lot of people are worried, like, should I leave my job and start a company? Why did you want to do that?
You know, for me, as an entrepreneur, right, it's difficult, right? It's difficult to navigate that journey independently, right? And I was making it work. And a part of that was in my outreach and connection and networking with other business leaders. That's how I met my current business partners.
Oh.
They operated their own very successful management consulting practice called The Powers Company. And they were growing so rapidly, they were outsourcing some work. And the network in the consulting industry is fairly small. And we kind of knew of each other and all coming up in the industry. And that was my opportunity to grow my private practice. But in doing so, we started having conversations as fellow entrepreneurs and where we wanted to take both of our businesses and our vision for the future. So
now, a lot of times in businesses, you're trying to solve a problem, like a need that's out there that's unmet right now. What gap did you see with CultureWorx that made you want to start the business?
You know, for us, it was in the management consulting practices, there's a lot of emphasis around systems and process improvement, right? And for us, our vision has always been, how do we impact root cause? And for us, root cause has a lot to do with leadership behavior. How do we impact leadership behavior and get at that as the major opportunity? And that's really is how we started to envision this culture performance improvement vision that we had. If you fix leadership behavior, your operational performance would have the real sustainable change and impact.
And every company is obviously different when it comes to culture.
You bet.
What do you recommend to a business owner that may be watching about the one or two behaviors they should be looking at? Because behaviors do affect outcomes. And a lot of times, you know, the business owner's focused on the P&L and making money, but not thinking about that root cause. What do you tell an owner?
You know, we often go to the owner and say, listen, at the heart of what you do from a purpose, vision, mission, value point of view, you expect people to show up and operate in a certain way every day. We have to get back to understanding what's going to be required to realize your ultimate outcome in your business from a behavioral point of view. How do you want people engaging, interacting, and making decisions in the business every day? And if we get very clear about that, then we can mobilize people around what that looks like. So we always go back to the foundation to what's required to drive the performance outcomes in the business. And oftentimes we have to work backwards. You've been successful. What drove the greatest successes in your business through the lens of engagement, interaction, and behavior? Have you and other leaders in your business showed up every day? Because if we can speak to that and define what that actually looks like in an actionable way, now we can start to mobilize individuals around what that should really look like. How do we scale that? How do we sustain that? And oftentimes we're working backwards to get back to foundational understanding of what's required. And then where do we go from there?
You know, as a consulting company, obviously you've got a lot of background, you're a doctor, you know, but when you hire people, how do you train them to try to do what you do so you can scale the revenue in the business?
Yeah, oftentimes it's really about just equipping people with a roadmap, no pun intended, a framework.
That roadmap right there. You saw that. Dr. Vaughn said the roadmap.
That's
right.
right.
Now you got to be watching the show.
It's all about the roadmap, right? If you can help a person understand where they are and where they want to be, and then understand how to navigate the journey, then they have a greater opportunity of actually arriving at that destination, right? That's the premise of a roadmap. Well, similarly, when we think about helping them know how to reinforce behavior, is to make it tangible, real, actionable. Here's what you can expect along this way. Here are some pillars, right? We call them the culture performance pillars, right?
Yeah.
Here's some pillars that you need to ensure you erect and travel sequentially to get you to that point. So we equip them with education, understanding, coaching, development around what does it mean to reinforce this leadership culture that you know is paramount to driving the business performance that you look for.
Why do so many companies just fail at culture? It feels like at the heart of it, when you have turnover, poor performance, your business isn't scaling the way that you want it to. Why do so many companies fail at culture?
You know, I think first is changing the mindset. When we talk about culture, it's become this sensationalized, almost abstract thing, culture. And we've materialized culture. Instead of talking about it in the context of how people are showing up, we talk about it in the context of pool parties and donut drives, right?
Exactly.
So
the ping pong table.
Right,
and
exactly.
The
so now the measure's been how happy my people are. Happy ebbs and flows, right? We're not talking about happiness. We're talking about engaging, interacting, and making decisions in a way that enables you to navigate the toughest of times in your business and the greatest of times in your business. So we have to get back to treating culture like a strategic pillar in the business and how to navigate it accordingly. It's not something that, as I say in the book, From Culture to Culture, it's not about an initiative. This is about strategically navigating and managing how people are showing up, engaging, and interacting. So guess the other failure point? Accountability.
Right, that's a big one.
All the way from the owner on down, are you perpetuating the behaviors that you want to see in your frontline leaders to get you to the outcome? Because if you're not, we got to start all the way there.
Now, I want to pivot for a second and talk about this other side of the business, because there was an acquisition with the Powers company.
You bet.
How did you know whether it's a merger or somebody buys your company and you're involved in that company now? How did you know it was right, and why did you decide to go this route?
You know, for us, it was very much about where can we have the greatest impact and fulfillment of our purpose and our vision for the business. And at the heart of both of our businesses was this premise around culture, leadership behavior, and how it powers the outcomes in businesses. Powers tagline, culture powers business. We believed that our greatest reach, our greatest footprint was very much rooted in our ability to touch as many organizations and ingrain ourselves in as many aspects of the business. And the challenge I saw in CultureWorx was we were addressing the business from a top-down point of view, but there was a gap. Like once we reached this point of impact in the business, there's still this component of what are the tools and mechanisms that are going to help reinforce and sustain a lot of the work that we had accomplished, right? And we tried to approach it through technology. And then Power said, wait a minute, we have a gap. We're approaching from a bottom-up point of view. We're addressing frontline leadership behavior and reinforcement, side-by-side coaching and support, but we're not addressing top-down. So we realized we both were solving a problem
just
through
a different
way, but how do we somehow leverage the synergies in our businesses? So we recognize the synergy. Now you couple that with, from an operational decision-making point of view, we were treating CultureWorx like a startup. We were investing in our sales channels. We were investing in independent marketing, public relations, building our operational infrastructure. There's costs associated with that.
Of course. Yeah.
And we were losing economies of scale that we could leverage with our sister company Powers. We're saying, wait a minute, we're repeating, there's redundancy in the business. And as operations guys, I started in operations before I dealt in leadership or organizational behavior. We're saying, wait a minute, from a lean standpoint, we're replicating efforts, we're duplicating costs in both businesses that have so much synergy and commonality and target market.
So when you make a deal, because I think owners do think about this, how did you know whether you swap equity or swap stock or you take cash or some combination of both? How did you think about that as you were making a deal? Because obviously you still have a lot of runway and what to do in the business.
Sure. I think it has a lot to do with anticipating where the market's headed, right? And what we saw was this, from an earning opportunity point of view, there was stagnation in the CultureWorx side in terms of business leaders' interest in this investment in culture exclusively, right? Because we're changing mindset around culture or leadership culture, right? being a strategic pillar. Now, when I enter we all know that leadership behavior is going to impact your business, but when I enter through the lens of operational improvement, now that's a trigger point that business leaders are more inclined to invest in, especially during economic uncertainty. So how do I anticipate for the business, my ability to fulfill my purpose isn't grounded in the name of the company. It's grounded in how we are able to actually penetrate and infiltrate a business in a way that helps them transform how they operate. So for me, and from our as business partners, we said, wait a minute, are we destined to actually see stagnation and a slow in our growth, not only in revenue, but scalability under the CultureWorx brand? Are we more inclined to take what we're doing in CultureWorx, integrate it in under the Powers brand in a way that appeals to the market interest, not just now, but into the future? When we see shifts economically, when we see an interest in trying to reestablish GDP, when we see an interest shifting in manufacturing and US-based agriculture, and all these areas where those are industry verticals that Powers has thrived in, food service industry, hospitality. These industry verticals that Powers has developed and has become a pillar to operational efficiency and improvement.
So do you still shape the day-to-day leadership in the company? Are you still involved in the day-to-day strategic of the company?
Very much so. Different acquisitions require a different, approach in terms of leadership, right? For us, it was, I'm a subject matter expert and thought leader in this thing that we call organizational behavioral change, right? And so I still have to play that role. While I'm still in market as CultureWorx and Powers, we're eventually going to shift and put our emphasis solely in the work that we're doing in Powers. During that time, I'm still serving as CEO of CultureWorx.
Got it.
I'm also the Chief Culture Officer for Powers as I start to lift and our go-to-market strategy is Powers. And what does that mean? And how do we start to further enhance and realize innovations that come on that side of the business?
How did you break the news to the people who are working with you that you were going to be acquired or merging into another company?
We operate through a lens of transparency, right? So as we were, as we were anticipating what's happening in the market and talking as entrepreneurs and partners, and what should we do? Does this make sense? I was very transparent with my team around what this would mean. And it was more about progressing the vision. And it never felt like a loss. It felt like a gain, right? For everyone. Hey, this is what it means to you as a member of this team.
Right.
And how it's going to advance the work that you're doing. So everyone entered it with a level of excitement around what this really meant.
So besides anything that you've written or published, if there was a book out there that a business owner could read about culture, are there any that you like that you would say are worth the read?
Putting my biases aside, I would say The Culture Code, and the author escapes me at the moment, but The Culture Code was pretty insightful, and I thought touched on many of the core principles that we reinforce surrounding how to truly proactively approach company culture, leadership culture, how to advance.
And what's inside of your book, From Culture to Culture? Well, which is the one that you should get, by the way, if you want to read the real version in here. But what's in that book?
From Culture to Culture, one of my business partners, Randall Powers, and I really wanted to take a very direct, simplistic articulation of this system we call culture performance management. And we articulate pillar to pillar, all 7 pillars, how to understand and navigate and implement this system for defining, implementing, and measuring and improving leadership culture. So we're saying, hey, let's operationalize this in a way that ensures that businesses can digest it. It's not this abstract thing. It's something they can get their hand around and actually start to drive transformation in their business. So that's how we approached it. There's some fun tidbits in there, but the first chapter really requires self-examination first before you can get at what's going to be required to transform leadership culture.
Well, you got to check out the book, Culture to Culture. Thanks so much for coming on the program today. I remember a long time ago that I heard that comment that culture eats strategy for lunch. Check out CultureWorx, check out Powers. This could make a major difference in the behavior of your people and ultimately the bottom line performance of your business. That's this week's show on The Roadmap, exclusively here on ASBN.com.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Ted Jenkins.